The ultimatum. The bridge of the UES Dauntless hummed with tension as Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the holographic projection of Counselor Zex Terra, the Arcturian representative of the Galactic Council. The alien's tentacled face wavered slightly, its bioluminescent patches pulsing with barely contained frustration. Captain Vasquez, this is your final warning. The Galactic Council orders an immediate cessation of all human military operations. Failure to comply will result in severe sanctions against Earth and its colonies. Elena's jaw clenched, her dark eyes flickering to her second-in-command, Commander Rashid Khan. He gave an almost imperceptible nod, confirming what they both knew. Backing down wasn't an option. Counselor, Elena replied, her voice steady and resolute. With all due respect, humanity cannot and will not stand down. The swarm is at our doorstep, and your council has done nothing but debate while our colonies burn. We will defend ourselves, with or without your approval. Zex Terra's tendrils writhed in agitation. You don't understand the delicate balance of galactic politics, Captain. The swarm is a force of nature, a cleansing fire that has culled species for millennia. Interference could have catastrophic consequences for whom, Counselor? Elena interrupted, her patience wearing thin. For your comfortable worlds, light years from the front lines. We've seen the swarm's handiwork. There's nothing natural about it, and we won't sit idly by while they devour our people. The Arcturian's color shifted to a deep, angry purple. This discussion is over, Captain. The Council's decision is final. Cease all military operations immediately, or face the consequences. The hologram winked out, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Commander Khan stepped forward, his usually stoic face creased with concern. Captain, what are your orders? Elena took a deep breath, her mind racing through the implications of their defiance. They'd known this moment might come, but the reality of it still felt like a punch to the gut. She turned to address her bridge crew, each face a mix of determination and apprehension. Ladies and gentlemen, we always knew this day might come. The Galactic Council has chosen fear and appeasement over action, but we are not them. We are humanity, and we do not go quietly into the night. She strode to the central holomap, activating a display of their local star cluster. Red markers indicated confirmed swarm activity, creeping ever closer to human space. The swarm has already consumed 3 of our outer colonies. Millions are dead or missing. If we stand down now, billions more will suffer the same fate. I don't know about you, but I didn't join the United Earth Navy to hide behind bureaucrats while our people are slaughtered. A murmur of agreement rippled through the bridge. Elena allowed herself a small smile before continuing. As of this moment, we are officially in violation of Galactic Council directives. I won't sugarcoat it. This makes us renegades in their eyes. But I believe in this crew, in this ship, and in the strength of humanity. We may stand alone against the swarm, but we will stand. Lieutenant Amelia Chen, their young tactical officer, raised her hand. Captain, what about our allies? Surely some of them will support us. Elena nodded, appreciating the question. Good point, Lieutenant. Commander Khan, bring up our diplomatic channels. It's time to see who our real friends are. As Khan worked the communications array, Elena continued. We may be surprised. There are species out there who've chafed under council rule for centuries. Our defiance might be the spark they need to take a stand. The holomap flickered, showing a network of diplomatic connections. Most were grayed out, indicating severed ties, but a handful still glowed with promise. Look there, Khan pointed, his voice tinged with hope. The Korriban Confederation. They're maintaining an open channel. Helena leaned in, studying the alien script scrolling across the display. They're offering support, weapons and intelligence, if we can rendezvous at these coordinates. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, quickly stifled as professionalism reasserted itself. Elena allowed herself a genuine smile this time. It's a start, people. We're not alone in this fight. Just then, Alarms blared across the bridge. Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew across her console, her face paling. "Captain, we've got incoming." Multiple swarm signatures detected at the edge of the system. The mood on the bridge shifted instantly from cautious optimism to battle-ready focus. Alina barked orders, her training taking over. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Helm, plot and intercept course. Weapons, arm all batteries, and prepare antimatter torpedoes." As the Dauntless surged forward, its massive engines pulsing with barely contained energy, Alina felt a strange calm settle over her. They were committed now, for better or worse. Humanity stood at a crossroads, and she was determined to see them through to the other side. "Open a channel to all Earth forces," she commanded. "This is Captain Alina Vasquez of the UES Dauntless. As of this moment, we are at war with the Swarm. The Galactic Council has abandoned us, but we will not abandon each other. Stand fast, hold the line, and remember, we are humanity. We do not go gently. We rage against the dying of the light. Vasquez out." As the message transmitted, Alina turned her gaze to the view screen, where the first glimmers of the Swarm's bioships were becoming visible. She felt the weight of history on her shoulders, the hopes and fears of billions resting on the decisions she would make in the coming hours. "All right, people," she said, her voice steady and determined. "Let's show the galaxy what humanity can do. Weapons free. Engage the enemy." The Dauntless surged forward, its weapons blazing to life as it hurtled towards the oncoming swarm. In that moment, as energy beams lanced out into the void and the first explosions blossomed in the darkness of space, humanity took its first defiant step onto a larger galactic stage. The battle for survival had begun, and with it, a new chapter in human history. The Galactic Council had ordered a ceasefire, but humanity's response was clear. This is just the beginning. Preparations for battle. The aftermath of the Dauntless's first engagement with the Swarm left the bridge crew exhilarated but sobered. They had survived, even dealt significant damage to the alien bioships, but the cost had been high. 3 of their escort frigates were nothing more than debris fields now, their crews lost to the voracious appetite of the Swarm. Captain Alina Vasquez stood before the holomat, studying the tactical overlay with a grim expression. Commander Khan approached, offering a data pad with the latest damage reports. "How bad is it, Rashid?" Alina asked, not taking her eyes off the swirling holographic display. Khan's voice was tight with controlled emotion. "We're operating at 68% efficiency, Captain. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7 have been contained, but our starboard weapons array is offline. Engineering estimates 12 hours for repairs." Alina nodded, finally turning to face her second-in-command. "And the crew?" "Morale is complicated," Khan admitted. "They're proud of what we accomplished, but the losses are hitting hard, and there's worry about what comes next. We're officially renegades now." "Then we need to give them something to believe in," Alina said, her voice filled with determination. "Summon the department heads. It's time we start thinking outside the box." As the Dauntless's leadership gathered in the conference room, Alina felt the weight of their expectations. These were Earth's finest, trained to face any threat. But the Swarm was unlike anything they'd encountered before. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we've bloodied the Swarm's nose, but this war is far from over. We need to innovate, to find weaknesses our enemy doesn't know it has. I want ideas, no matter how crazy they might seem." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the ship's chief scientist, cleared her throat. "Captain, I've been analyzing the data from our engagement. The Swarm's bioships seem to communicate using some form of quantum entanglement. If we could disrupt that signal, we could throw their entire fleet into chaos." Lieutenant Chen finished, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "Exactly," Yuki nodded. "But we'd need to get close, dangerously close, to plant the disruptors." Alina leaned forward, intrigued. "How close are we talking, Doctor?" "Inside their defensive perimeter," Yuki said quietly. "Essentially, We'd need to let them swallow us whole." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. Khan spoke up, his voice skeptical. "That's suicide, Doctor. How would we even survive long enough to plant the disruptors?" Elena held up a hand, silencing the objections. "It's risky, yes, but it's exactly the kind of unconventional thinking we need. Dr. Tanaka, work with engineering to develop these disruptors. Lieutenant Chen, I want simulations running round the clock. Find us a way to make this work." As the meeting continued, ideas flew thick and fast. Weaponizing dark matter, creating holographic decoys to confuse swarm sensors, even attempting to communicate with the hive mind itself. Some were practical, others bordered on the absurd, but Elena encouraged them all. They needed every advantage they could get. Hours turned into days as the Dauntless raced towards the rendezvous point with their Korriban allies. The ship became a hive of activity, every crew member working tirelessly to prepare for the battles ahead. In engineering, Chief Zara O'Malley orchestrated a ballet of sparks and machinery as her team pushed the ship's systems beyond their design limits. "More power," she shouted over the din of welding and hammering. "I want every joule squeezed out of those reactors." Meanwhile, in the ship's vast hangar bay, Wing Commander Dan Reyes drilled his pilots mercilessly. Simulator after simulator, each more challenging than the last. Again, he barked as another virtual squadron was decimated by swarm fighters. The real thing won't give you second chances. Elena made a point of visiting every department, offering encouragement and sharing in the burden of preparation. She knew that the coming days would test them all to their limits and beyond. As they approached the rendezvous coordinates, Elena stood on the bridge, watching the unfamiliar stars streak by. Khan joined her, his usual stoic demeanor softened by concern. "Elena," he said quietly, using her first name, a rarity that spoke volumes about his worry. "Are you certain about this course of action? Allying with the Korribans, defying the Council. There's no going back." Elena turned to her friend, her dark eyes filled with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "No, Rashid, I'm not certain. But I am sure that doing nothing means the death of everything we love. Sometimes, you have to take a leap of faith." Khan nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Well then, let's hope these Korribans can catch us." The moment was interrupted by Lieutenant Chen's excited voice. "Captain, Korriban ships detected on long-range sensors. They're not alone." Elena rushed to the tactical display, her heart racing. The holomap showed a small fleet of ships unlike anything she'd ever seen. Sleek, organic curves melded with crystalline structures that seemed to defy the laws of physics, and among them, vessels of a dozen different designs, some familiar, others completely alien. "It's not just the Korribans," Khan breathed, his eyes wide with amazement. "Look at the ID signatures. Talaxians, Vorcha, even a Droin high ship. They've all answered the call." Elena felt a lump form in her throat. They weren't alone after all. In defying the Galactic Council, in choosing to stand against the swarm, humanity had ignited a spark of rebellion across the galaxy. "Open a channel," she commanded, her voice thick with emotion. "To all ships. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Dauntless. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for your courage and your trust. Together, we face an enemy that threatens not just our individual species, but the very concept of freedom in this galaxy." She paused, looking around at her crew, humans all, but representatives of the best their species had to offer. "We may be outnumbered, we may be outgunned, but we have something the Swarm and the Galactic Council can never understand: the power of choice. We choose to fight, not because we are ordered to, but because it is right." As Elena spoke, the Allied ships moved into formation around the Dauntless, a gleaming armada of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. Let this be the day we declare to the universe that no power, no matter how ancient or terrible, has the right to decide the fate of sentient beings. We are many species, but we stand as one against the darkness. For our homes, for our families, for the future of all free peoples, we fight. A chorus of cheers erupted over the comm channels, a cacophony of alien voices united in purpose. Alina felt a swell of pride and determination as she gave her final order. All ships, battle formations. We have a date with destiny, and I intend for us to keep it. Weapons free, and may fortune favor the bold. As the Allied fleet surged forward, Alina knew that the real test was yet to come. But for the first time since the swarm had appeared on humanity's doorstep, she felt a glimmer of hope. They had started this journey alone, renegades in a hostile galaxy. Now, they were the vanguard of a movement that could reshape the stars themselves. The battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity was ready to lead the charge. The first engagement. The combined fleet of human and alien ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Arcturus system, a dazzling array of technological marvels united against a common foe. Captain Alina Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Dauntless, her eyes fixed on the tactical display as sensor data flooded in. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tension thrumming through the ship. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across her console. "Swarm signatures detected, Captain. They've already begun harvesting the outer planets. Current count, over 300 bioships, with more arriving by the minute." Commander Khan leaned in, his face grim. "That's more than twice our number, even with our allies." Alina nodded, her mind racing through tactical options. "Then we'll have to be twice as clever. Open a channel to the fleet." As the comm system crackled to life, Alina addressed their motley armada. "All ships, this is Captain Vasquez. The enemy outnumbers us, but they don't outmatch us. Remember your training, trust in each other, and show these mindless drones what it means to fight for something greater than yourself. Dauntless out." She turned to her crew, feeling the weight of their trust and expectations. "Lieutenant Chen, deploy our new quantum disruptors. Let's see if Dr. Tanaka's theory holds water." "Commander Khan, coordinate with our allies. I want overlapping fields of fire and mutually supporting defensive formations." As the orders were relayed, the fleet began to move with surprising synchronicity. The crystalline Korriban ships took point, their advanced shields shimming with barely contained energy. Talaxian stealth corvettes darted between larger vessels, sensor scramblers working overtime to confuse the approaching swarm. The first wave of bioships surged forward, a writhing mass of chidness armor and biological weapons. Energy beams lanced out from the Allied fleet, scoring hits against the swarm's outer defenses. But for every ship destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. "Quantum disruptors online," Chen reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Firing. Now." A pulse of invisible energy rippled out from the Dauntless, washing over the swarm formation. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, chaos erupted. Swarm ships began to collide with each other, their movements erratic and uncoordinated. Some fired wildly into space, while others simply drifted inert. "It's working," Khan exclaimed, a rare smile breaking through his stoic demeanor. "Their hive mind is disrupted. They can't coordinate their attacks." Alina allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before refocusing. "Excellent work, everyone. All ships, press the advantage. Concentrate fire on their command nodes." The battle raged on, a dizzying dance of destruction and survival. The Allied fleet, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity and ingenuity that seemed to catch the swarm off guard. Korriban energy lances pierced bioship armor like tissue paper, while Vorcha boarding parties engaged in brutal close-quarters combat within the alien vessels. But the tide of battle is fickle, and victory was far from assured. A group of swarm dreadnoughts, apparently shielded from the quantum disruption, began a coordinated assault on the fleet's flank. "Drawing high ship is taking heavy damage," Chen reported, her voice rising in alarm. "Their shields are failing." Alina's mind raced. The droin were their heaviest hitters, and losing them could turn the tide of battle. "Helm, Bring us about. We're going in. The Dauntless surged forward, its advanced human engines pushing it to speeds that seemed to bend the very fabric of space. They arrived just as the droid ship's shields collapsed, interposing themselves between their allies and the swarm's onslaught. Divert all power to forward shields, Elena ordered as the first barrage of bioplasmic energy washed over them. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring across every deck. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Khan reported, clinging to his station as the ship rocked under the assault. We can't take much more of this, Captain. Elena gritted her teeth, her knuckles white, as she gripped the arms of her command chair. We hold. Give the droid time to recover. Lieutenant Chen, target those dreadnoughts with everything we've got. The Dauntless's weapons blazed to life, antimatter torpedoes and particle beams slamming into the massive swarm vessels. But it wasn't enough. The bioships pressed forward, their attacks growing more frenzied, as if sensing victory within their grasp. Just as it seemed the Dauntless would be overwhelmed, a new voice cut through the chaos of battle. This is Corax of the Korriban Confederation. Vasquez, hold your position. Reinforcements incoming. A brilliant flash of light erupted behind the swarm dreadnoughts as a dozen Korriban battlecruisers dropped out of FTL, their weapons already firing. Caught in a devastating crossfire, the massive bioships began to falter. Now, Elena shouted, all ships, concentrate fire on their weak points. The combined firepower of the Allied fleet, newly bolstered by the Korriban reinforcements, tore through the swarm's defenses. One by one, the dreadnoughts exploded in spectacular bursts of bioluminescent fire. As the last dreadnought fell, a cheer went up across the fleet, but Elena knew the battle was far from over. The main swarm fleet was regrouping, adapting to the quantum disruption. Captain, Chen called out, her voice a mix of excitement and trepidation. I'm detecting a massive energy buildup within the swarm fleet. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Elena leaned forward, studying the readings. Whatever the swarm was planning, it was big. All ships braced for impact. Defensive formations, now. The space between the two fleets seemed to ripple and distort. Then, with a flash that momentarily outshone the system's star, a wave of pure entropy washed over the Allied ships. Systems failed across the fleet, shields collapsed, weapons went offline, and for a terrifying moment, it seemed as if all hope was lost. But then, something unexpected happened. As the entropy wave passed, the Allied ships began to recover far more quickly than they should have. Energy readings stabilized, shields snapped back into place, and weapons came back online. What just happened? Elena demanded, looking around at her equally bewildered crew. Dr. Tanaka's voice came over the comm, breathless with excitement. Captain, it's the quantum disruptors. They didn't just affect the swarm. They've somehow altered the fundamental laws of physics in this region of space. Our systems are adapting, evolving in real time. Elena's mind reeled at the implications. They had stumbled upon something revolutionary, a weapon that could reshape reality itself. But there was no time to fully process the discovery. The swarm, momentarily stunned by the failure of their ultimate weapon, was regrouping for another assault. All ships, Elena commanded, her voice filled with newfound determination. Prepare for Phase 2. It's time we show the swarm what happens when you back sentient beings into a corner. We're taking the fight to them. As the Allied fleet surged forward, bolstered by their miraculous recovery and the game-changing potential of the quantum disruptors, Elena felt a glimmer of hope. They had survived the first true test, bloody but unbowed. The real battle was just beginning, but for the first time since the war started, it felt like they had a fighting chance. The stars themselves seemed to burn brighter as the fleet engaged the swarm once more. Humanity and its allies united in a desperate bid to turn the tide of galactic history. The first engagement. The combined fleet of human and alien ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Arcturus system, a dazzling array of technological marvels united against a common foe. Captain Alina Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Dauntless, her eyes fixed on the tactical display as sensor data flooded in. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tension thrumming through the ship. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across her console. "Swarm signatures detected, Captain. They've already begun harvesting the outer planets. Current count, over 300 bioships, with more arriving by the minute." Commander Khan leaned in, his face grim. "That's more than twice our number, even with our allies." Elena nodded, her mind racing through tactical options. "Then we'll have to be twice as clever. Open a channel to the fleet." As the comm system crackled to life, the Lena addressed their motley armada. "All ships, this is Captain Vasquez. The enemy outnumbers us, but they don't outmatch us. Remember your training. Trust in each other, and show these mindless drones what it means to fight for something greater than yourself. Dauntless out." She turned to her crew, feeling the weight of their trust and expectations. "Lieutenant Chen, deploy our new quantum disruptors. Let's see if Dr. Tanaka's theory holds water." "Commander Khan, coordinate with our allies. I want overlapping fields of fire and mutually supporting defensive formations." As the orders were relayed, the fleet began to move with surprising synchronicity. The crystalline Korriban ships took point, their advanced shields shimming with barely contained energy. Thalaxian stealth corvettes darted between larger vessels, sensor scramblers working overtime to confuse the approaching swarm. The first wave of bioships surged forward, a writhing mass of chitinous armor and biological weapons. Energy beams lanced out from the Allied fleet, scoring hits against the swarm's outer defenses. But for every ship destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. "Quantum disruptors online," Chen reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Firing. Now." A pulse of invisible energy rippled out from the Dauntless, washing over the swarm formation. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, chaos erupted. Swarm ships began to collide with each other, their movements erratic and uncoordinated. Some fired wildly into space, while others simply drifted inert. "It's working," Khan exclaimed, a rare smile breaking through his stoic demeanor. "Their hive mind is disrupted. They can't coordinate their attacks." Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before refocusing. "Excellent work, everyone. All ships, press the advantage. Concentrate fire on their command nodes." The battle raged on, a dizzying dance of destruction and survival. The Allied fleet, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity and ingenuity that seemed to catch the swarm off guard. Korriban energy lances pierced bioship armor like tissue paper, while Vorcha boarding parties engaged in brutal close-quarters combat within the alien vessels. But the tide of battle is fickle, and victory was far from assured. A group of swarm dreadnoughts, apparently shielded from the quantum disruption, began a coordinated assault on the fleet's flank. "Droin High ship is taking heavy damage," Chen reported, her voice rising in alarm. "Their shields are failing." Elena's mind raced. The Droin were their heaviest hitters, and losing them could turn the tide of battle. "Helm, bring us about. We're going in." The Dauntless surged forward, its advanced human engines pushing it to speeds that seemed to bend the very fabric of space. They arrived just as the Droin ship's shields collapsed, interposing themselves between their allies and the swarm's onslaught. "Divert all power to forward shields," the Lena ordered as the first barrage of bioplasmic energy washed over them. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring across every deck. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, Khan reported, clinging to his station as the ship rocked under the assault. "We can't take much more of this, Captain." Elena gritted her teeth, her knuckles white, as she gripped the arms of her command chair. "We hold. Give the Droin time to recover. Lieutenant Chen, target those dreadnoughts with everything we've got." The Dauntless's weapons blazed to life, antimatter torpedoes and particle beams slamming into the massive swarm vessels. But it wasn't enough. The bioships pressed forward, their attacks growing more frenzied, as if sensing victory within their grasp. Just as it seemed the Dauntless would be overwhelmed, a new voice cut through the chaos of battle. "This is Corax of the Korriban Confederation. Vasquez, hold your position. Reinforcements incoming." A brilliant flash of light erupted behind the swarm dreadnoughts as a dozen Korriban battlecruisers dropped out of FTL, their weapons already firing. Caught in a devastating crossfire, the massive bioships began to falter. "Now," Helena shouted, "all ships, concentrate fire on their weak points." The combined firepower of the Allied fleet, newly bolstered by the Korriban reinforcements, tore through the swarm's defenses. One by one, the dreadnoughts exploded in spectacular bursts of bioluminescent fire. As the last dreadnought fell, a cheer went up across the fleet. But Elena knew the battle was far from over. The main swarm fleet was regrouping, adapting to the quantum disruption. "Captain," Chen called out, her voice a mix of excitement and trepidation. "I'm detecting a massive energy buildup within the swarm fleet. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Elena leaned forward, studying the readings. Whatever the swarm was planning, it was big. All ships, brace for impact. Defensive formations, now. The space between the two fleets seemed to ripple and distort. Then, with a flash that momentarily outshone the system's star, a wave of pure entropy washed over the Allied ships. Systems failed across the fleet. Shields collapsed, weapons went offline, and for a terrifying moment, it seemed as if all hope was lost. But then, something unexpected happened. As the entropy wave passed, the Allied ships began to recover far more quickly than they should have. Energy readings stabilized, shields snapped back into place, and weapons came back online. "What just happened?" Elena demanded, looking around at her equally bewildered crew. Dr. Tanaka's voice came over the comm, breathless with excitement. "Captain, it's the quantum disruptors. They didn't just affect the swarm, they've somehow altered the fundamental laws of physics in this region of space. Our systems are adapting, evolving in real time." Elena's mind reeled at the implications. They had stumbled upon something revolutionary, a weapon that could reshape reality itself. But there was no time to fully process the discovery. The swarm, momentarily stunned by the failure of their ultimate weapon, was regrouping for another assault. "All ships," Elena commanded, her voice filled with newfound determination. "Prepare for Phase 2. It's time we show the swarm what happens when you back sentient beings into a corner. We're taking the fight to them." As the Allied fleet surged forward, bolstered by their miraculous recovery and the game-changing potential of the quantum disruptors, Elena felt a glimmer of hope. They had survived the first true test, bloodied but unbowed. The real battle was just beginning, but for the first time since the war started, it felt like they had a fighting chance. The stars themselves seemed to burn brighter as the fleet engaged the swarm once more. Humanity and its allies united in a desperate bid to turn the tide of galactic history. Turning the tide. The aftermath of the first major engagement left the Allied fleet battered but triumphant. As emergency repairs were conducted and the wounded tended to, Captain Elena Vasquez called an urgent meeting of the fleet's leadership aboard the Dauntless. The ship's conference room was a sight to behold. Humans sat alongside towering Korriban crystal forms, while holographic projections of other alien commanders flickered in and out of existence. At the center of it all stood Elena, her uniform scorched and her face weary, but her eyes blazing with determination. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored allies," she began, her voice carrying the weight of recent battle. "We've proven that the swarm can be fought. More than that, we've discovered a weapon that could change the course of this war. Dr. Tanaka, if you would." The ship's chief scientist stepped forward, her usually immaculate lab coat stained with coolant fluid. The quantum disruptors didn't just interfere with the swarm's communication. She explained, bringing up a holographic display of swirling energy patterns. They've created localized areas where the laws of physics are flexible. We can potentially rewrite the rules of engagement in our favor. A murmur of excitement rippled through the assembled leaders. Korax, the Korriban commander, spoke up, his crystalline form shimmering with barely contained energy. This is unprecedented. With this technology, we could render the swarm's biological advantages obsolete. Exactly, Elena nodded. But we need to act fast. The swarm is adaptive. They'll find a way to counter this if we give them time. The Talaxian admiral, Zen, leaned forward, his feline eyes narrowed in thought. We still face overwhelming numbers. Even with this new weapon, a direct confrontation is risky. Elena smiled, a plan already forming in her mind. Then we don't give them a direct confrontation. We strike at the heart of their operation. We find their queen. The room erupted in a cacophony of voices, some supportive, others skeptical. Commander Khan raised his hand, silencing the din. Captain, with all due respect, we don't even know if the swarm has a queen. And if they do, finding her in the vastness of space is exactly the kind of impossible task humans excel at, Elena finished. We've intercepted enough of their communications to know there's a central intelligence guiding their actions. Find it, and we can end this war in one decisive strike. As the meeting continued, plans were drawn up, contingencies discussed, and a daring strategy began to take shape. The Allied fleet would split into 3 task forces, one to continue engaging the swarm directly, keeping their attention focused, another to escort Dr. Tanaka, and a team of scientists to a secret base where they could further develop the quantum disruptor technology, and a third, led by the Dauntless, to hunt for the elusive swarm queen. Days turned into weeks as the new plan was put into action. Across the galaxy, battles raged as the Allies fought to buy time and gather intelligence. The Dauntless, accompanied by a hand-picked group of ships from each Allied species, delved deeper into swarm-controlled space than any sentient vessels had ever dared. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Elena pored over star charts and intercepted swarm communications, searching for patterns that might reveal the Queen's location. Lieutenant Chen worked tirelessly at her station, her tactical genius proving invaluable in predicting swarm movements. Captain, Chen called out one day, her voice tight with excitement. I think I've found something. Look at these energy signatures. Elena rushed to the tactical display, her heart racing. The holomap showed a distant star system, unremarkable save for the massive amount of swarm activity surrounding it. But there, at the heart of the swirling mass of bioships, was an energy reading unlike anything they'd seen before. That's it, Elena breathed, a mixture of anticipation and dread washing over her. That's where we'll find the Queen. Helm, set a course, and signal the fleet. It's time to end this. As the Dauntless and its escort ships prepared for the final push, tension mounted across the Allied forces. This was the moment that would decide the fate of not just humanity, but countless species across the galaxy. The journey to the swarm's heart took days, each moment fraught with the risk of detection. But Elena's strategy, combining Talaxian stealth technology with Korriban sensor scramblers, allowed them to slip through the swarm's defenses undetected. Finally, they arrived at the outer edges of the system. What they saw took their breath away. A massive structure, part organic hive and part technological marvel, floated in the shadow of a dying star. Swarm ships swarmed around it like angry insects, but at the center of it all was a pulsing, almost hypnotic energy signature. There, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. That's our target, the Swarm Queen. As the Allied ships moved into position, alarms suddenly blared across the Dauntless. We've been detected, Chen shouted, her fingers flying across her console. Swarm ships incoming from all vectors. Belena's mind raced, weighing options in split seconds. They were outnumbered 100 to 1, with no hope of reinforcements. but they were also closer to victory than they'd ever been. "All ships, this is Captain Vasquez," she commanded, her voice steady and resolute. "Initiate Operation Trojan Horse. May fortune favor the bold." With that, the Allied fleet sprang into action. But instead of engaging the oncoming swarm ships, they did something utterly unexpected. They shut down all non-essential systems, powered down weapons, and allowed themselves to be captured. The swarm, seemingly confused by this tactic, enveloped the Allied ships in tendrils of biomatter, drawing them inexorably towards the central hive structure. It was a desperate gambit, but one born of human ingenuity and the combined knowledge of their alien allies. As the Dauntless was pulled into a cavernous docking bay within the hive, Alina turned to her crew. "This is it, the moment we've been fighting for. Remember your training. Trust in each other, and no matter what happens, know that your actions today will echo through history." With a hiss of decompression, the airlocks opened. Alina, leading the strike team of humans and aliens, stepped out into the heart of the swarm's domain. The passageways pulsed with an eerie bioluminescence, and the air was thick with an alien musk. As they fought their way deeper into the hive, facing waves of drone warriors and biological defenses, Alina couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. For all its horror, the swarm was a marvel of evolution and adaptation, but it had never faced anything like the combined will of free, sentient beings fighting for their right to exist. Finally, after what felt like hours of grueling combat, they'd reached the central chamber. And there, suspended in a web of pulsing energy and biomatter, was the Swarm Queen. She was both beautiful and terrifying, a being of immense psychic power and alien intelligence. For a moment, all was still. Then the Queen's voice echoed in their minds, a symphony of conflicting emotions and alien concepts. "Why do you resist? We offer unity, perfection, the end of conflict, and the beginning of true harmony." Alina stepped forward, her voice strong despite the psychic pressure bearing down on her. "We resist because we choose to. Our conflicts, our differences, our very individuality. These are not flaws to be corrected. They are the source of our strength, our creativity, our ability to grow and change." The Queen's form shimmered, a ripple of what might have been confusion passing through her. "You would choose chaos over order, struggle over peace. We choose freedom," Alina replied. "The freedom to make our own choices, to forge our own paths, even if that means facing hardship and conflict. Because without that choice, we're nothing more than drones. And we've come too far, fought too hard, to accept that fate." With that, Alina gave the signal. Across the system, the Allied ships sprang to life, their hidden weapons blazing. Dr. Tanaka's improved quantum disruptors activated, creating a bubble of altered reality around the hive structure. The Queen screeched, a sound that reverberated through both mind and matter. But it was too late. The combined assault of the Allied forces, coupled with the reality-warping effects of the quantum disruptors, began to tear the hive apart. As the structure started to collapse around them, Alina turned to her team. "Fall back to the ships. We've done what we came to do." The retreat was as chaotic as their advance, with falling debris and confused swarm drones impeding their path. But driven by the promise of victory, they pressed on. As they reached the Dauntless, Alina took one last look at the disintegrating hive, feeling the psychic death throes of the Queen echoing in her mind. With a final burst of effort, the Allied ships broke free of the collapsing structure, racing away from the dying star. Behind them, the Swarm Queen's final scream reverberated through space, a shockwave of psychic energy that marked the end of her reign. As they regrouped with the rest of the fleet, reports began to flood in from across the galaxy. Without the Queen's guidance, the swarm fell into disarray. Some ships simply drifted inert. Others turned on each other in a frenzy of confusion. Standing on the bridge of the Dauntless, watching the holomap as swarm signatures winked out one by one, Alina felt a profound sense of relief, tinged with sadness for the cost of their victory. Commander Khan approached, a rare smile on his face. "We did it, Captain. We actually did it." Elena nodded, her eyes still fixed on the map. "We did. But this isn't the end, Rashid. It's a new beginning. For all of us." As the Allied fleet began the long journey home, Elena knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had proven itself on the galactic stage, forging alliances and achieving the impossible. The Galactic Council's authority had been shaken, and new possibilities for cooperation and exploration lay ahead. The war was over, but the real work of building a better future was just beginning. And Elena Vasquez, along with the crew of the Dauntless and their alien allies, was ready to face whatever challenges that future might bring. Aftermath and new beginnings. The return journey to Earth was a bittersweet affair. As the Dauntless led the Allied fleet through the vast expanse of space, Captain Elena Vasquez found herself lost in thought, staring out at the star-studded void. They had achieved victory against impossible odds, but the cost had been immense. "Penny for your thoughts, Captain." Commander Khan's voice broke through her reverie. He stood beside her, his usual stoic demeanor softened by a look of concern. Elena sighed, turning to face her friend and second-in-command. "We won, Rashid. So why doesn't it feel like a triumph?" Khan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Because we're soldiers, Elena. We see the cost behind the victory. The lives lost, the world scared. But we also know that without our actions, the cost would have been far greater." Their conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Chen's excited voice. "Captain, Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council." Elena straightened, exchanging a wary glance with Khan. "On screen, Lieutenant." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the familiar tentacled visage of Counselor Zexterra. But the Arcturian's usual haughty demeanor was gone, replaced by an expression that, even on an alien face, could only be described as chastened. "Captain Vasquez," Zexterra began, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with what might have been nervousness. "The Galactic Council extends its gratitude for your actions against the swarm threat. We may have underestimated the severity of the situation and the capabilities of humanity and its allies." Elena fought to keep her expression neutral, though she couldn't entirely suppress a raised eyebrow. "That's quite a change of heart, Counselor. What brought this on?" Zexterra's tendrils writhed uncomfortably. "Recent events have forced us to reevaluate our policies. The coalition you've formed, the technologies you've developed, they represent a shift in the galactic balance of power that cannot be ignored. The Council formally resigns all sanctions against Earth and its colonies. Furthermore, we invite humanity to take its place as a full member of the galactic community." The bridge erupted in cheers, quickly stifled as the crew remembered their discipline. Elena allowed herself a small smile before responding. "That's a generous offer, Counselor. But I think recent events have shown that the old way of doing things is no longer sufficient. Perhaps it's time for a new approach to galactic governance." Zexterra's color shifted to a deep, thoughtful blue. "What do you propose, Captain?" "A summit," Elena replied, her mind racing with possibilities. "Not just with the Council, but with representatives from all spacefaring species. It's time we forge a true galactic alliance, one based on mutual respect and cooperation, not fear and control." The Arcturian was silent for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Your proposal has merit. The Council will consider it. We await your return to discuss the details." Zexterra out. As the transmission ended, Elena turned to her crew, seeing a mixture of hope and uncertainty on their faces. "Well," she said with a wry smile, "it seems our adventure isn't quite over yet." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. As news of the swarm's defeat spread across the galaxy, celebrations erupted on countless worlds. But for Elena and the crew of the Dauntless, there was little time for revelry. They worked tirelessly, coordinating with their alien allies to draft proposals for the upcoming summit. Dr. Tanaka and her team continued to refine the quantum disruptor technology, exploring its potential for peaceful applications. Lieutenant Chen found herself giving lectures on human tactical innovations to eager alien strategists. Finally, after weeks of preparation, the day of the Galactic Summit arrived. The chosen venue was a massive space station orbiting a neutral star, its docking bays filled with ships from hundreds of different species. As Elena stepped onto the station, flanked by her crew and alien allies, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This was history in the making, and humanity was at the center of it all. The negotiations were intense, often heated, but always driven by a shared understanding. The old ways were no longer sufficient. The galaxy needed a new order, one that could face threats like the swarm while preserving the freedom and diversity of its member species. Days turned into weeks as agreements were hammered out, alliances formalized, and a new framework for galactic cooperation established. Through it all, Elena found herself at the forefront, her experiences during the war providing invaluable insights. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of debate and compromise, a new galactic charter was ratified. The Galactic Council was reformed, with humanity and its allies given prominent roles. New protocols for handling existential threats were established, along with programs for shared technological development and cultural exchange. As Elena put her signature to the document, officially committing humanity to this new era of cooperation, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment tinged with trepidation. They had changed the course of galactic history, but the real challenges were just beginning. Months later, standing on the observation deck of the newly christened Galactic Alliance headquarters, Elena watched ships from 100 different worlds coming and going. Commander Khan joined her, a data pad in his hand. The latest reports from the expedition to the former swarm territories, he said, handing her the pad. They'd found something interesting. Elena skimmed the report, her eyes widening. Dormant swarm eggs. Are they sure? Khan nodded grimly. Preliminary scans confirm it. It seems the Queen had a contingency plan. The question is, what do we do with them? Elena was silent for a long moment, weighing the implications. Finally, she spoke, her voice firm but tinged with compassion. We study them. We learn from them. And maybe, just maybe, we find a way to give them a choice. The choice we fought so hard to preserve. As they stood there, watching the bustle of galactic civilization around them, Elena couldn't help but smile. The war had been won, but the real adventure was just beginning. Humanity had taken its first steps onto a much larger stage, and the possibilities were as endless as the stars themselves. You know, Rashid, she said, turning to her friend with a glint of excitement in her eyes. I have a feeling our next mission is going to be even more challenging than the last. Khan groaned good-naturedly. I was afraid you'd say that. Well, Captain, wherever we're headed next, I'm glad you'll be leading the way. As they turned to leave, preparing for whatever new adventures awaited them, Elena took one last look at the star-filled expanse beyond the station. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and dangers beyond imagination. But with their allies by their side, and the spirit of humanity driving them forward, she knew they were ready to face whatever the universe had in store. The ceasefire order from the Galactic Council seemed like a lifetime ago. Humanity had not just survived, they had thrived, reshaping the very fabric of galactic society. And as Elena Vasquez stepped into her new role as a leader not just of humanity, but of a united galaxy, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning.